Welcome in, everyone. You're back with us on Stand for Kind Talks with Candy Olant. That's me and Kristen Chapman.
Hello.
And our guest today is Hannah Bowman. Hannah is a junior at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And she was a high school friend of my son, and she went on to college. And she's going to talk to us today about transitioning into college life and just, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And just kind of help some of our listeners understand that it's going to be okay.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Hannah. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you all so much for having me on, and I'm really excited to be on y'all's podcast, and I'm really honored that you guys asked me to be on it.
Oh,
Oh,
you're so sweet. Do
you
you want to
sweetheart.
tell us a little bit about yourself, tell our listeners kind of who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually from Nashville, Tennessee. That's where the majority of my family is from, and I moved to Knoxville when I was around 6. And I played soccer and ran track throughout all of grade school, and absolutely loved it. I still run today. And that's where I picked up a lot of my friends in high school. And I was always interested in like art and creative fields. I'm a super huge nerd. I love Dungeons and Dragons and Marvel and all things Star Wars. The list can go on and on. And I actually really love math and science too. And I wanted to be an engineer for a long time. But then I realized that was really super hard. I took some classes in high school and I was like, I don't jive with this. And I eventually pivoted to architecture because it is such a creative field, and that's why I'm going to UT. They have an incredible architecture program, and it was just very convenient to only be living 30 minutes away from where I used to live and be pursuing the major that I wanted to pursue.
That's cool. That's really cool. I didn't know that you ran track, and that's really neat. And so you keep that
Yeah.
up now. Do you have running buddies that you connect with at school?
Yes. So one of my roommates is just incredibly talented. I played soccer with two of my roommates in high school, and I was really lucky to have that connection. And so my other roommate, I have three roommates. Two of them were from high school, and one of them was random, and she is from Illinois, and she's a bodybuilder, and so she really pushes all of us to work out and keep on, being healthy physically. So I would say that she's a huge impact on me staying fit now in college.
That's awesome because that can be really hard. I was a cheerleader, but not like a rah-rah cheerleader, like a competitive cheerleader and gymnast in high school. Once you leave that, if you don't take whatever your sport is with you to college, it can become really difficult to stay active other than like walking around campus because those University of Tennessee hills will get you.
They're a
But
killer.
other
They're
than that,
absolutely
it's
killer.
hard to like stay active and keep active. So that's great that you have those positive influences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's cool too, because we've talked to a couple other people on the podcast about transitions, and in that process, like finding a group that you connect with in your new school life that that can be like a support system, or they can maybe nudge you to make more healthy choices. Because
Mhm.
let's be real, when a lot of people go to college, it's the first time they've left home. They're faced with a lot of responsibility and a lot of decisions for the first time. And sometimes, we don't always make the best decisions. So it's nice to have some real positive, like, influences encouraging us to exercise and that sort of thing. I guess let's talk about, did you always know you wanted to go to college?
I personally did. I love learning, and I knew that college was a good fit for me because in high school, I didn't really like English classes. I liked facts and I liked history. I know. My
Yeah,
mom
we're
would be so
opposite.
disappointed.
Sorry, girl.
I know. But like I love to like learn about the world and all like just all the things it can give you in history. And so that was a really big pull. And also typically to become an architect, you have to have a degree and you have to have a license. And so
Yeah.
I knew going into it that I needed to go to college that had an accredited program. And so I had a lot of discussions with like high school counselors and my mom and like people that were close to me or people that were in the field, and I narrowed down my options to three colleges and applied to all of them. And I eventually got into UT's program, and that was just the perfect fit for me.
How did you know it was the perfect fit for you? Like, what made you choose UT?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, I did not want to go to UT. I was like, I'm not going close to home. I want a new experience. I want away from my family. This is not it. Uh, but then I went on like multiple college tours, and I went to Georgia Tech, and it was really overwhelming. And I was like, whew, I maybe not want to live in a big city. Like I thought I was going to be the big city girl. Mm-mm. Nope, it was not it. And then I went to Virginia Tech, and they have an amazing program there too. And it was just kind of it was very competitive, and the students were very competitive with each other. And I was like, I don't know if I really like that. But then I went on tour at UT, and they were very like collaborative. Like it was very clear that professors were going to help you, that you're working with your peers. You had many, many options to do what you wanted and to explore. And so I think then it made me realize, oh, I can go to UT and have my own experience. Even if I'm so close to home, I can make it feel far away. But if I need my mom and if I need my close friends, like I also have that option. So that's why UT was a really good choice.
I love that. That's crazy. We have a very similar story. So I'm not from Knoxville. I'm actually from Rochester, New York. And
Okay.
my mom worked at the university that I went to for my undergraduate degree. And I felt the exact same way as you. I was not going to RIT. Like, there was no way. I had no
Mhm.
interest in it. I didn't even want to apply. I wanted to kind of, even if I stayed local, I just didn't want like that connection. It felt like my mom's workplace, not my college. And so I looked at several other colleges, and then something about the vibe there like just fit, which is weird because I was a psychology liberal arts major at a major engineering school, like hardcore engineering, IT. My brother went there and majored in medical informatics. Like, it just totally isn't like this a psychology school, but something about it just kind of caught my attention, and I ended up having the absolute best 4 years of my life there. I guess I can't say that anymore. I have a baby now, so now this is the new best part of my life. But like, until I had my child, who is my world, like, it was some of the best years of my life, because
Mhm.
college can just be so much fun if you find that right fit and that like right vibe for you.
Yeah, I
What was
definitely
like
think,
going through your mind when you got your acceptance letter?
ooh, a whole lot of emotions. I was very nervous. Like, I think my first emotion was just nerves and anxiety. And like I said, I only applied to three schools, and the two were Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. And getting into the architecture program at these schools was kind of like a two-step process. Like you had to be accepted into the university first, and then you had to get accepted into the College of Architecture at each school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got them in order of Virginia Tech. I got waitlisted for their program, and then Georgia Tech declined me. So I was like, oh no. And UT was last, and they accepted me. So when I got their acceptance letter, I was ecstatic. I was so excited. Um, and I knew that a lot of my friends were going already because they had gotten accepted into the university. So that was also like something that I could fall back on and be like, okay, everything's going to be great. But definitely very, very nervous at the same time.
Did you have a backup plan? And it's okay if you didn't. I'm just curious. Like, what if University of Tennessee waitlisted you, or did you have a thought of what you would do?
Yeah, my backup plan. My mom's a high school teacher, so we talked about this a lot because she was like, there's a possibility you don't get into these schools, even with you can have an amazing GPA and you can have an incredible portfolio, and sometimes they just don't accept you, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my cousins actually, uh, there's six of us total, and three of them, I'm not sure. Some of them, didn't get accepted into UT and stuff like that has happened. So my plan was to go to Pellissippi, which is a community college, for the 2 years of free schooling that they offer, which is an incredible, incredible opportunity that a lot of high school students take, and a lot of people highly recommend doing that. But my plan was to go to Pellissippi and then try to eventually transition to UT or another program.
It's a good backup plan, for sure. Or what do we say, Candy? They're not backup plans. They're, what did Derek tell us they're called?
Oh my God, I don't remember.
I know, it was so good too. It's not a
It
backup
was
plan,
so good.
not like an alternative plan, but like it's the other
Yeah,
plan.
yeah,
It has a more positive like connotation that it's not necessarily plan B, right? It's just as good of an option. It's just another path,
hmm
like it's indifferent, but it's good. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes
I
any
hate to,
sense, but
because
I do.
I know I just hate to call community college a backup plan because I mean I had to
Yeah,
take classes at Pellissippi before I went to University of Tennessee, because there were so many classes from RIT for my undergraduate that they like didn't recognize as official undergraduate classes that I needed in order to be admitted to my master's program. So I went to Pellissippi and I just loved it. I absolutely loved that college. It was great.
well, I think Hannah talks about it too in the state of Tennessee. With the Hope Scholarship, you can go to a college like Pellissippi the first 2 years for free. And I mean, that is a great opportunity for a lot of people to have a college experience, get a lot of prereqs under their belt. And then if they want to transition into a 4 year, they can. I think that's a really valid thing. Yeah, it's a good opportunity for them. And I'm glad you had a good experience there. Um, so, Hannah, you talked about when you got that letter, you were anxious, you had anxiety. And for those of our listeners that don't know, anxiety is generally speaking a fear of the future, it's a fear of the unknown. So, oftentimes people will say, I'm excited, I'm anxious, I'm nervous. So, what were you the most excited slash anxious about when you thought about going to university?
Um, I I'm a very like type A person, and so I like to have a plan. And so when I realized that I was going to be alone and I was going to be navigating college all by myself, it was a very daunting thought. Like I was going to be away from my family for the first time. That's crazy. And I'm really really close to my sibling, and I was like, even being 30 minutes away just felt like a lot because they were still in high school, and I was just so nervous that like the relationships between me and my family or me and my friends were gonna change somehow or
It's
um,
valid.
lessen. Yeah, but I was really excited for the freedom that came with college life. Like that's like a thing that a lot of people say because it's so true. Like I could make my own schedule. I could take the classes that I was interested in, and then I can accomplish the things that I found genuinely important, which is something that's really hard to do in high school. Like, you're given a little bit of freedom, but you're given a basic schedule, and they're like, here's the classes you have to take to graduate, which is awesome and it's needed for structure. But college is just so different. Like, you can choose any path that you want, and I just found that so freeing and very exciting.
Did you feel like you were ready, Hannah?
Me personally, yes.
Uh huh.
I just love the idea of like living by myself and having my own space and
Oh, yeah.
just everything that came with college. But I know a lot of people, when they actually got here, that kind of changed. Like the idea of it is so exciting, but then when you're actually living it, it's a very different feeling. Like the feeling of like being alone or like not having anyone to talk to is really difficult to navigate on your own. Um, but it's just one of those things where like that is so inevitable and that's like a universal experience through almost everyone I've talked to that's come to college. And knowing that you're not alone is probably the most important thing when you get that
Yeah.
acceptance letter. Like you're not alone and that your feelings, no matter what, it's going to be okay because you have people around you that genuinely care about you.
Yeah. And even though you stay local, because obviously, I mean, I went through the same thing. You stay local, but everyone kind of goes on their own way after high school. Everyone is on their own path. Some people go straight to careers. Some people take the college route. Some people go military. So, and even if you do have friends kind of stick around and stay in the same area, you're on to a new phase of your life.
Hmm.
And so you kind of not necessarily lose touch completely, but those relationships aren't the same when you go to your high school friends, and even your family. You go from living with your family for 18 years to all of a sudden you're in a dorm room or an apartment or I mean, maybe some people stay home, obviously, but a lot of people move out, and that is just a totally different experience. Um, even though
It
you
is.
yeah. And even though you
It is.
stayed local, I mean, you obviously have friends that leave the state and everything. So, like, what was that like? Do you have advice for people trying to maintain those relationships?
Yeah, it's really hard when you are so close to people in high school. Like you have 4 years with them, maybe even longer, and you're so used to the routine. You're used to seeing the same people and over again, and it's just hard at the beginning because it's just a whole new routine. And especially just freshman year is difficult all around. And a lot of my tight knit group, like we were so incredibly tight, especially with it's kind of strange to say, but when the pandemic hit, we got even closer. And so
Mm.
that happened right before we transitioned to college. And so we were seeing each other every day. And the summer before going to college, we were just, I don't think there was a day that we didn't see each other. And I actually had started a relationship with my current boyfriend in early April before school. And when he went to college, he went to Alabama. And navigating that was extremely difficult because I had never been in a relationship before. We were just learning about each other's communication skills. But I think that the most important thing when you're going away from your friends and your family and your loved ones is to realize that they will be there for you and to reach out in any way that you want. So for some people, that's giving someone a call, FaceTiming someone, or sending someone like a funny meme online, stuff like that. A lot of people connect through video games. Just finding out like how you can still communicate with your friends over long distances is really important. And, for some people, it means like having to branch off and be like, you are part of my life, and that is so incredibly special, and I will always cherish that. But sometimes people just go their own way. And
Hmm.
then sometimes you can pick things up right where they left off. Some people are just like that. And so I think learning to really accept that is the most important thing. Like, not everyone is going to have the same communication pattern as you.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's just important to realize that
Such great
everyone's different.
advice.
It is.
Yeah.
And you learn, I think you're saying too, Hannah, people come in and out of your life. And there's a season for them. And sometimes it's to teach you something, support you, whatever it might be. And then sometimes the season passes and they move on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just part of life. It's change, which is a constant. And when you're at college and you're transitioning into college, you face a lot of change. You talked about, I kind of want to back up just 1 second. You said freshman year is really hard. So, what in your experience was so difficult about that freshman year?
I think it was just very difficult to learn about my personal internal habits. Like forever in high school, I just went along with the motions. People told me what to do. But having so much freedom really shows you the kind of person that you are.
Mm,
And that can be really scary for some people. Like you don't realize that these are your habits and these are the things that you do. And like fitting into a class routine can be really hard with that. Like being an architecture student is incredibly rigorous and labor intensive, and many other majors are. And so I learned what times I work best. Like I tend to work best midday, which is kind of strange. So I wake up at usually a typical time and I go to sleep usually at a typical time. But some people work better at night. Like some people work better in the morning. And learning about those internal habits takes time. But I think that that is one of the hardest things to learn as a freshman is that um, that's okay. Like you just have to adjust to living on campus at your own pace. Sharing a space with someone is really difficult to
mm,
do, especially for the first
yeah.
time. I was incredibly lucky in my experience. I roomed with someone that I was very close to in high school. We have very similar habits. I'm still roommates with her today. She's awesome. But some people don't have that experience. Some people's roommates are really terrible. Yeah. Not terrible people, but have terrible habits, like things that
Mhm.
just don't align much with yours. Uh,
Mhm.
and so, learning to deal with other people is really hard. Um, just the exploration of freshman year is very daunting and a lot. During my first year, I learned how much UT had to offer, and it was, we have amazing professors and students with different mindsets that come over from all over the country, and it really pushes you out of your comfort zone. Um, and I think that learning to embrace that your freshman year is really hard but important to do.
Yeah,
So you
Candy.
gained a lot of self awareness. Sorry, Christine, go ahead.
I was going to say that that I had, Candy knows I had a rough freshman year of college. I've actually talked about it on the podcast before too. Um, Freshman year of college is so hard, and you can be the most prepared person or feel the most prepared and the most ready, and it will still probably rock your world. It's just a totally different ball game, and it's really hard to explain unless you've lived it and unless you've gone through it. Um, but I was not lucky with my roommate. We did not get along. But the guys that lived across the hall from me became my best friends and my roommates for the rest of college. And he was in a 5-year engineering program. So we got to live together for 4 years. I went to his wedding in Milwaukee after we graduated, still in touch with him today, planning a trip to go see him. I mean, and now we're getting to the point where I've graduated college almost 10 years ago. And he's still one of just my best friends. So still don't regret it. Still ended up working out for me.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
cool. And if you're wondering, like, I didn't go to college until later in life. I took the career path right out of high school. Just for many different reasons, family circumstances. I ended up moving out at a really young age. So I lived on campus. I lived not far from where you live, Hannah. I lived on Clinch for years and years and
Wow.
years. Yeah, and worked downtown and just lived the life, but I wasn't at the university. And I saw all of my friends were at the university. So I saw them navigating college life where I was navigating career life. But I eventually went to college as a non traditional learner because I was 38 when when I went to college. And so it was a very different experience, very different. But there was still anxiety because I was in classes with people I didn't know. Can I do this? I was nervous. Like some of those feelings were probably similar, but I was adulting already quite a lot at that point, right? And I had a small child that I was also taking care of, and I was also working full time. So I was a mom, a full time student, and a full time employee going to school. So I understand the rigors that you guys are facing, but you're young and like you're experiencing so many of these things for the very first time, and you're navigating them. And I think the way you're handling it, Hannah, is just going to set you up so beautifully when you're ready to enter your career. You're going to gain such wonderful experience, interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills. There are going to be so many things you're going to be able to take with you to where you go in and you're a good employee. Like you're going to be recruited, because you're making good choices in your college life right now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too. Very insightful, very wise for your age, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Hannah, what was the hardest part about like adjusting to classes and that workload?
Ooh, yeah, workload is probably the hardest thing in my experience. High school is kind of it can be really difficult, but for me, it was kind of like easy. Like I kind of understood I don't want to say easy, but like I got the patterns and I got the rhythms. I fell into place, and I kind of understood what was expected of me, um, and stuff like that. But in college, it's just a little bit different. Like your professors aren't they can be very close to you, but sometimes they aren't very close to you, and so they're not expecting anything out of you. You kind of have to set your own goals. I think that was the hardest thing for me in my workload. I'm very lucky to be in this architecture program because I get more personal experience with professors, and I can kind of push myself by like making them be proud of me in a weird way. Like that's a kind of strange thought, but yeah, that's how I learn and I deal with the rigors. Is that if I know that my end product is going to look good and perform well, I'll work harder on it. And so I think finding the classes that kind of meet you in the middle too is important. Like, uh, some people take the chemistry and biology route, and that is very factual based, and it's memorization and it's applying what you've learned. And the rigors of those classes are very, very hard. But if you learn that you're good at that and that's your passion, then it's going to become easier. Uh, and so adjusting to that first year and the rigors of my classes was very, very hard to do. But honestly, I think it gives you more of a passion for what you're doing as well. Things that are easy aren't going to be the things that you're like passionate about.
Mm.
Like if it's too easy for you, then maybe that's not the right route. You got to be learning something. And so for my roommates, that's biochemical like craziness. She wants to go to med school. For another one of my roommates, that's pushing herself physically. Like it might not have to be the rigors of your classes, but what you want to do and working on campus, stuff like that. And for me, like that first year, I really learned how to balance everything in life. Like I focused so much on my classes, period, and only my classes. But I realized that this campus had so much more to offer in terms of like, you can join clubs that will help you exercise. You can join clubs that will help you do service. And just learning that there's more than just classes or there's more than just social life was a really good lesson to learn my freshman year.
Is there any support you wish you had had through that process? Kind of
I was
hindsight's always 2020.
exactly in the moment. I was really really lucky and I had support from a lot of my close friends and roommates at UT. But we're all going through uh, freshman year is just hard for everyone. And so it put a lot of strain on my relationships. Uh, and plus, the pandemic was also happening. So that was like extra strain outside of the typical freshman year stressors. And I was leaning on peers with similar experiences. And it really helped a lot. But the thing that I wish that I had was more like adult mentorship.
Hmm.
It's very, very hard and scary to envision the future. But talking to people that have like more experience than you do is very empowering because you know that they have had experience in these feelings and how to move through them and to come out on the other side better than you were before. And so I just wish that I had more access to adult mentors and more opportunities to talk to people that have been through what I had been through. I feel
I'm
like
writing that down. Seriously, because with Stand for Kind, those are the kinds of things that we're working on, right? Kristen is trying to figure
Hmm.
out how we can support that transition from high school to college. And then we're looking at moving into the college space with some of our programs. So knowing that there's a group of kids out there, I don't mean to call you kids, college students who would feel that it's beneficial to have an adult that's been there or can help mentor them through the situation is really good to know. I mean, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's great
yeah.
advice also. Because when you're talking to other college students, you're talking to your peers about it, you're kind of all in the same boat. It's more of a sounding board situation where
Mhm.
you're not necessarily getting that insight from people who have been through it and who have lived
Yep.
it because you're all living it together. So I think that's great advice, to look for some mentorship from someone who's been through it.
That's
Yeah, and it's
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
Hmm.
it's kind of strange because I eventually did find that. I'm actually sitting in her office right now. Like it's just so funny because hindsight is 2020, and I didn't really come. I've learned that adult mentorship is so important, and I got that through campus ministry, which I never thought that I would do or find. But it's become such an integral part of my life, and I feel like those things in college really teach you, like, oh, this is something that I can do, and this is something that I actually find important, and you just learn so much about yourself. Um, but yeah, my freshman year, I wish that I had found this place because talking to someone like a youth minister or like a pastor or a professor that you've become really close to or just anyone that has been through this experience helps so much and is so important.
I
A
was gonna
healthy, trusted adult.
Yep, I was going to ask how you found that, and you answered my question before I even got to ask it. But I was thinking, so you mentioned professors that you like have really good connections with, and then also normally, I don't know if this is still a thing, but 10 years ago when I was in college, do you still have like faculty advisors at all?
Yes, they become more online, so that's like a tricky thing now because it's like if you want to meet with them in person, they're so busy and it's really hard to schedule. But yeah, they're available, and oftentimes people will go outside of their department to go to other counselors, which I also
Mm.
recommend because I know a lot of people have difficulty getting scheduled with like their recommended advisor because there's just so much on their plate now. But a lot of people will go like outside of their college. Like someone I know is in engineering, and oftentimes she can't meet with her like advisor, so she'll have to go to somebody else. And they're still very helpful. They still know how UT works, and they'll outsource information, and they'll be there for you if you need it. There's also a lot of like great mental health access in universities now, so that's another like adult mentor that you can kind of source through that. It doesn't necessarily have to be therapy. It can just be someone that you want to talk to. You know, it's realizing that there are resources out there is really difficult. And I think that's one of the challenges of being a freshman.
Mm. It's like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of information, there's new relationships, there's classes. I mean, it's just so much. And so I guess you just have to like stop, breathe, have some coping skills, hopefully talk to somebody and prioritize. Otherwise, it can probably feel like you're drowning a little bit, I would imagine.
Absolutely. It's so cool that there are so many resources and things, but it's hard to sift through. Like what's right for me? Is this actually going to help? Like stuff like that, and or is this available to me? I think you just have to try, and it's really difficult to put yourself out there and try. But oftentimes, the first one you go to, like the first attempt that you make, is not going to work. That's okay because that person is going to know other resources that will fit your needs.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
also very wise.
It is. I know. You're so
Being
insightful.
flexible. I know. Just wide beyond our years.
So you talk about like how difficult this transition is. We've talked a lot about that. What are some struggles that you see other students going through? And you don't have to name names or anything, but what are some things like some common trends that you're seeing among your peers?
Yeah, I think the pretty typical thing that I see other students go through is burnout, myself
Mm,
included. But it's just a typical thing that people go through. It's really hard not to get wrapped up in schoolwork and block everything else out. But
mm,
finding time for yourself or to be with other people is vital to your like human function. And so learning how to deal with burnout and then realizing that that is a typical thing. Like you're not abnormal for feeling very overwhelmed in situations. Uh, people have to rewire the way that they think about personal care. It's not something that you can ignore. And some days are going to be harder than others. Like I'm going to go get cookout one day, and that's just going to be my meal for the day. But allowing that to not be a pattern is also something that's really difficult. Uh, yeah, just learning to like be a human being is probably some of the struggles that I see other freshmen go through.
I
I
would eat
also
Chick-fil-A
see
every day if I could. Let me just tell you.
it's there's a Chick-fil-A on every corner, and it's so terrifying. Like, it's so hard not to get Chick-fil-A. And nowadays they give you your phone that you have like money on that you could just tap and buy endless Chick-fil-A. But it's pretty bad. But it's awesome. Like, I don't know. It's just college is a funny place because like where else would that be the case? Um, I think another thing. This is like very off topic, but I saw people struggle through their choice of majors a lot, uh,
Mm,
which I didn't personally experience because I'm a very type A person, and I was like, I'm gonna do architecture. Architecture is the thing for me, and it just so happened that I really enjoy it. Like, that's kind of abnormal.
I'm
Uh,
happy for you that it worked out. It's working out.
Me too. But I think like struggling to find a choice in major causes a lot of panic. But it's okay to realize that the thing that you're doing is something that you're not passionate about, and learning to realize that that's okay takes time. But I can almost guarantee that you will like if you don't know what your major is going to be, that you're still going to thrive, and you can make as many choices as you need to, but you're still going to graduate and it'll be okay.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that until you said it, but that's actually the other reason why I did not want to go to RIT is because I wanted to be a teacher and they didn't have an education program.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, well, go in a psychology program. They're so related. And they are. Oh my goodness. I can't even believe how much overlap there is between psychology and education. She was like, go into that program. And I was like, no, I don't want to because it's not like what I want to do. But everything worked out. Like everything was totally fine. And then I just did my master's in education. And so the first thing that you pick, or you may pick something and be like, I'm going to love this. This is totally my future. And then you get in it. My brother with medical informatics, you get in it and you're like, whoa, like totally not what I wanted to do. So I think that's great advice as well.
It is. I started out as a business major, international business, and I got through three accounting classes. And I thought no, I really wanted to cry every time I walked through the door, even though the professor was wonderful. He was a wonderful man and he was very inspiring and he made class better. I just did not like it at all. And I told Kristen this story. I was sitting in accounting class, and it was like the way the school was laid out. It was almost like a fishbowl, like it had lots of windows. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm hating my life at that point. I'm exhausted. I don't like the content. I'm reevaluating everything, right? And I look over, and there's a classroom set up like an elementary school classroom. And they're obviously, now I know what they were doing. They were modeling and practicing collaborative learning in there. And so they were moving around, they were working together. The room was colorful, and I looked over and I thought, oh my God, that's where I want to be. That's what I really really want to do. And so I had to change. And a lot of my stuff, I mean, I had to take more classes. I had to start not completely over, but I did, and I'm so glad I did because it. I loved teaching, and I love teaching, and I got to meet Kristen and work with Kristen, and she's been a big part of my life. So sometimes you just you have to go through that tough moment and make a decision. Um, but I guess that can be stressful, and you've got the pressure of parents
Mm.
saying you need to make a decision. This is costing me a lot of money. You know, you can't be in there 6 years just for a bachelor's degree. Like you got to make a decision. So there's that pressure, and I understand that everything is really expensive right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did want to ask you too. This is kind of rabbit trailing off in a different, but you were talking a lot about relationships too, and how you think it's important to try to maintain those relationships from high school. Obviously, the relationship with your parents, but I happen to have inside information that your significant other is in Alabama. He
Hmm.
goes to the University of Alabama, right?
Yes.
And what has it been like maintaining that long distance relationship and the rigors of your schoolwork?
Whew. Yeah, it's such a big part of my life now, and I did not expect it to be, but I'm so thankful that it is. And learning to have a healthy long distance relationship is a very difficult thing to do, and it takes time. It really does take time because at first I had never been in a relationship before this one, and so everything was new. Like I was learning how to be in a relationship in a healthy way, but then also learn how to communicate long distance and like how much time to allot for like travel and all of that stuff. But I think if it's just working together. It's like a long term collaboration between someone that you can't see. It's very difficult, but it's so worth it if that is like the person for you. Like some weeks are going to be really hard, and so in our relationship, it's it's communicating that like, hey, this week is going to be really really hard for me to talk. I'm so sorry. Like, can we schedule something on this day? You know what I mean? Like, just learning how to bounce off each other and balance. It's a huge balancing act. And then learning to like take time to see the other person and be like, I know what you're going through. I see you, even though I can't be with you. Um, and like, you can still talk about things that are on your mind. So, like, there's so many things you can do in a long distance relationship. And I know it's a lot of people's worries, like going into college with a relationship. And, some people, long distance relationships aren't for them, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
if you think that is going to be an unhealthy thing for you to do, or you're not going to be able to provide the other person with the things that they need, sometimes stepping away is the most important thing you could do for that person. But I was lucky enough to be with another person that he was totally okay with that, and I was okay with it too. But it's an ongoing conversation. It always is, and so checkups is really important. Like, how are you feeling? Like, you still feeling okay with this? Like, is there anything I can do? Is incredibly important. And it's like that with all of your friends. It doesn't have to be just like a romantic long distance relationship. It could be like that with friendships. Like, hey, I want to hang out with you more often. Or I want to hear you. It just makes the other person feel heard and loved, and it makes you feel heard and loved too.
It's true. I have so much respect for you guys and how obviously your relationship is built on mutual respect and trust. The fact that you respect each other enough to communicate your needs and accept that I don't have a lot of time to talk right now, but I still trust you enough to know that the time will come when we will have that time, right?
Yeah.
I just think that's just absolutely, it's very inspirational. It's precious.
Thank
It
you.
is. So, as you navigate this relationship that you have, and friends, and school, and exercise, and all the things, what's helped you keep your routine?
Yeah. It definitely
That's a
takes a
great
lot of
question.
time to develop a routine. And but what I've learned about myself is that making goals for myself rather than like hard deadlines
Mm.
assist me the most. And so some people, I'm not a planner person at all. I cannot keep a planner. I will not stick to it, and I will just disappoint myself when I don't do the things on my planner in the order that they need to be done. Um, and so what I do is I kind of like write down notes to myself constantly on everything, and it just helps me keep track of things without putting a lot of pressure on myself to like complete everything by a certain time. But some people are different. Some people love planners. Some people will write notes on their hands. Like, it's just going to be different from person to person. And so I think like learning how to organize my thoughts in a way that makes sense to me
Mm.
was really important to my routine. Like, you don't have to abide by a rule that you were taught in high school or by a professor. Like, if it's working for you, it works for you, and that's the best thing. Um, I've also learned to like set aside a chunk of my time for just myself. Like, I remember freshman year with my long term, like my long term, my long distance relationship. Uh, it was really hard to not use my extra time for him, and that put a lot of strain on me.
Mm,
I, I was just overwhelmed and I couldn't take a break and I was constantly going. But, through that experience, I just kind of learned like I do really need alone time. Like I need time to reprocess my day, even if it's just 15 to 30-minute increments. Uh, that was important to me. And I know that that is an important lesson for a lot of people on campus to learn. Like you don't have to constantly be going to keep your routine up. It oftentimes helps you be more productive. And so, like on that same vein, a part of my routine is just having a day on the weekend for time with friends because that is what I really value now. College is only like 4 or 5 years undergraduate. And so you really want to spend time with those people and build relationships. And hearing about people's days and what they're up to is so inspiring. Like it helps you be more productive
mm,
and it just help me relax in an entirely different way. So that's kind of the things that I find valuable in my routine. And that just came with time and experience, like learning that, hey, I need more time for myself. That was a learned experience. You're not going to get it right on the first time. Um, yeah.
It's good self-care advice right there.
it is. I just thought of a question that I wanted to ask you, and I don't know. Help me, Kristen, help me phrase this because she shares a brain with me a lot of times. Okay, so Hannah, if knowing what you know now, right? If you could go back to that graduating senior in high school, what would you tell yourself? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you
What
nailed
would you
it,
say to
girl.
yourself? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, oh, what do I tell her? I would tell her that everything was going to be okay. I know that that's also a very cliche thing to say, but um, it really is going to be okay. Like some things are not going to go the way that you plan them. And I try to plan everything, but sometimes it's just not going to go the way you want it to. And oftentimes, whenever you get skewed off your path, that's the best thing that could have happened. Like you're
Mm,
learning so much about yourself and what you like to do in college. College is a time that's meant to be like all about you. Like you're allowed to be as selfish as you want. It's a weird space, but especially transitioning from high school to college, you're learning about yourself, and that's what it's meant for. So you're allowed to make mistakes, and you're allowed to not get it right the first time. So I would probably tell myself to take it easy and take things slow because you just want to cherish all the time left. Like I'm a junior. It's flown by and I still have 3 more years left. A lot of people are graduating next year that I know. That's crazy. And so, learning how to slow things down and really appreciate what's going on around you. Um, yeah, just not freak out and appreciate things.
It's great advice.
mm-hmm.
It is. I'm very guilty of that, like the planning piece, like you said. Like I really like to plan everything. I really like to know what is happening, when it's happening, that everything's going to be okay. And I find myself worrying a lot about the future. Whether it be just my last big one was taking my son on an airplane. I was very nervous. And I planned everything down to a T. I was nervous about security. I was nervous about onboarding the plane. I was nervous about the actual flight. I was nervous about getting off with him. Like was his stroller going to make it? And everything worked out. And if it hadn't, we would have figured it out. Like I think that's really good advice to try not to get caught up in that stuff and to just know that everything, as cliche as it is, everything will be okay.
Yeah. And you're going to flex your problem solving skills. Like
Yeah.
Kristen, like you said, if something had happened, you would have flexed and you would have been like, okay, we're going to pivot. We're going to do this. We're going to roll. Because it never stops, y'all. My child is 17, going to be 18 in a couple of months. He's going to start college. You think I got anxiety about that? Check.
Yeah.
Check. Like there's anxiety there, like, but yeah, it's going to be okay. It's because it's going to work out the way it's supposed to, especially if you're taking proactive steps to set yourself up. for success. And Kristen, you like to anticipate problems. That made you a great teacher. Because when you anticipate misconceptions of your learners, you can get in front of them, and that's part of problem solving. And that's learning to adult, you know, and you're doing that in college, which is a beautiful thing. You're learning to adult because, when you get out into the workforce, you're still going to be problem solving. You're still going to be showing up to work going, it's going to be okay. They didn't like that plan, but you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to rework it. I'm going to get some advice from a senior architect, and we're going to make this happen. The world is not going to crumble, but it feels real intense sometimes in the moment, and that's okay. You just have to be able to, you got to work through it, and you got to be able to problem solve and all that kind of good stuff. What was the most difficult part of transitioning into college life?
For me, the most difficult part for transitioning into college life was learning that you're not going to get it right the first time. College is all about growth, and it feels bad when you get stuck. But being stuck is also growth, and taking steps backwards is also growth as well. And so, kind of reframing your mindset about life was probably the hardest part about transitioning to college for me.
What was the biggest help during your transition period?
My biggest help during my transition period was definitely my friends and family. It was difficult to not feel like a burden when I needed to reach out for help, but knowing that they were there and knowing that the people closest to you understand and they want to be there for you in times of struggle was really important during that period of time.
What do you enjoy the most about being in college?
I The thing that I enjoy most about being in college is definitely the freedom. Everybody says that, but I can eat lunch wherever I want. I can take classes that interest me. I can make my own schedule, and the list goes on and on.
What's one piece of advice you would give freshmen about handling being away from home?
The piece of advice that I would give to freshmen about handling being away from home is that you aren't alone. Everyone wants to seem like they're totally fine with being away from their friends and their family and like they've got everything under control. But 9 out of 10 people you meet on campus are also grappling with the difficulties of being away from their friends and families. And so don't be afraid to reach out to upperclassmen, professors, your peers, or your family to just talk about how you're feeling.
What advice would you give a freshman regarding handling their workload?
The piece of advice that I would advise freshmen about handling their class load is finding a planning method that works best for you. For some people, that's sticky notes, and for some, that's Excel sheets. For some people, it's writing notes on your hand. But whatever works best for you is the right way.
What's your mantra for pushing forward and not giving up?
My mantra for pushing forward and not giving up is that you can do anything that your heart desires. The human spirit is such a powerful thing, and you can do anything that your mind is set on. And if you struggle or sway off the path, that's totally fine. It's just a part of being human, and that is such an amazing thing.
Yeah. Hannah, it has been an absolute pleasure to sit down and talk to you today about your college life experience, sharing your pearls of wisdom. You've been very real with us about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we just really appreciate that. And I just wish you all the best. And, I'm going to be keeping tabs on you anyway. So just thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. It was awesome to talk about my experience and learn about yours. And just thank you.
You are wise beyond your years, Hannah. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank y'all.